Hi, I'm Shannon Gilmore and I'm with Third Eye Nutrition. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite beverages, which is coffee. Um, Now, I get this question a lot that should I drink coffee? And the reality is that it depends. Coffee actually has a tremendous amount of health benefits. There's a ton of research out there showing this. But there are certain individuals who shouldn't drink coffee, or at least keep it down to a minimum. And I actually just recently wrote a blog on this, detailing that. So go visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com, which is where I go into more detail about kind of just the conditions that one may have that you may not want to be drinking as much of it or stop it altogether. Okay. But in the meantime, healthy coffee can actually be a very healthy beverage, a very, very healthy beverage. And the reason why is that it has, for a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason is why it has a tremendous antioxidant level in it. Okay. And as you know, what you're going to hear me talk about over and over and over again is that you always want to offset oxidative stress and inflammation in your body. And coffee is chock full of antioxidants. Okay. However, coffee can also be a very toxic substance if you're not sourcing it right, if you're not doing a couple things with it right. So today we're going to talk about 5 different things, and I'm only going to cover two because given that 400 million cups of coffee are consumed every day, like this is actually a pretty important subject because it's so integrated in the everyday life of the American people and all around the world for that matter. So there's 5 things to think about: where you get it from, so the sourcing of it, the quality of it, the preparation, so how are you preparing the coffee, the mode of transportation, so what kind of coffee mug are you using, and then the last is what's in it. Okay, what additives are you putting to it? When I drink coffee, what I try to do is I try to maximize the antioxidant intake and I try to minimize the toxic exposure. Okay, so I want to minimize my toxin ingestion. And there's a couple ways that you can do this to help you out, and this is what we're going to cover today. The big ones are, where does it come from? The source. Now, most species on this planet have some type of self-defense mechanism in place, and plants are no exception. So coffee beans that are grown at higher altitudes actually have a higher antioxidant level than a lower altitude counterpart. Okay. The reason why is that it's higher up towards the sun, so it has a higher UV exposure. So you really want to try and shoot for coffee beans that are grown at about 5,000 to 6,000 feet above sea level, okay, because it just simply has a higher antioxidant level. But another nice side benefit to that is that it's colder up there and they grow slower and have a lower yield. This actually imparts a more like robust, full, delicious flavor onto the coffee beans. So you're gonna want to buy beans from the regions of like Ethiopia, Colombia, Kenya, Guatemala, Sulawesi, which is in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea. These are all areas that are about 5,000 to 6,000 feet high that will have a more robust flavor. The downside of this is that it's a little bit more expensive because, like I said, it has a lower yield because it's colder regions. Okay, so that's the only downside to it, is that it is a little bit more expensive, but it's worth it. The next thing you want to think about with the actual sourcing of it is how are they drying these beans? Okay, so they pick them, they wash them, and then oftentimes they either could be machine dried or they're sun dried. And the problem with sun dried is that oftentimes, and particularly in humid areas, which I've mentioned a lot of those areas, is that mold grows. Okay, so even though it's a really nice romantic notion to be like, oh, it's laying out in the sun, Mother Nature's drying it, and then it's going to the mill, you know. Yes, but the reality is that mold is actually becoming an increasingly more difficult problem with people. There's a lot of like mycotoxins and things like that. And mold simply just grows when you lay it out in the sun to dry. Okay, so you really want things to be machine dried versus sun dried. The next thing to think about is the roast. Okay, the roast is sort of how much they basically cook it. So you can either have a light, medium, or dark roast. And this is a little bit of a conflicting sort of issue because when you cook beans or roast them, what happens is that there's a substance called acrylamide that's released. And acrylamide is considered possibly cancerous. At least in animal studies, we are seeing that acrylamide has cancerous-like impacts on the animals. And the highest levels that are seen in a coffee bean are in the light roasts, okay? Basically, acrylamide is just the cross-linking of the amino acids in the sugars in the bean that they cross over and they form this sort of bond, okay? So that's what acrylamide is. It's very similar to like toasting your bread. That brown, nice crispy part, that's like a Maillard reaction. It's the same thing. So what you want to think about is the problem with it, or the other flip side of this, is that the darker the beans are, so like a French roast, it's you char the beans, you char the heck out of them. Okay, so you lose that antioxidant quality the more you roast it. Okay, so the darker it is, the lower the antioxidant levels. So this is something that you don't necessarily want. So we don't have enough research to actually show, because there's no really a lot of studies on this with the acrylamide levels. And ironically enough, cancer is actually shown to be reduced with high coffee intake. So there's something that we don't fully understand yet about the mechanism of the coffee bean. So for now, I would say shoot for the middle and go for the medium roast, which still has a really good antioxidant level, but it's higher. It's going to have maybe lower acrylamide levels than, let's say, a light roast or like a blonde roast. Okay, so that hopefully will help you a little bit in terms of deciphering where to get your beans and what to look for when you purchase them. So I hope that was helpful. I know I integrate these practices into my daily living because coffee is delicious, but I do want to minimize the amount of toxic exposure I have. Okay, so hopefully I'll see you next week, and come visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com if you have any questions at all. If you do check out that blog, I also am offering sort of a free gut health manual. If you have any type of bloating, or you avoid certain foods on certain nights because you're wearing something tight, and you just have a lot of GI issues, whether it's diarrhea or something like that, this little manual might actually help you a little bit. So come visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com and get a free copy of that. So have a wonderful weekend and go have a good cup of coffee.